Okay, we're back talking Arizona elk draw application strategy 2023. Today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the just overall strategy of archery hunting and what Arizona archery elk hunting actually looks like for a resident and a non-resident. So there's a few things to clear up and a few misconceptions, and also just some education for you as a non-resident or as a resident that like to get into hunting. One of the misconceptions is if you are an Arizona resident, you know, everybody goes, "Oh, you're so lucky you get to, you know, hunt elk and all that kind of stuff." And that's not necessarily the case. So it all depends on what you do, where you draw, the timing, what hunt, archery, muzzleloader, or rifle hunt. It really determines your ability to hunt elk on a regular basis. And if obviously if you're hunting cow or bull. So today we're just going to talk about archery. So in Arizona, there are 2 archery hunts for elk, 2 main ones. Okay. The big one, which everyone talks about and everyone wants to try to draw, is the early archery elk hunt. And that goes from mid-September to late September. It's a 2-week hunt. It's a 14-day hunt. And that hunt is extremely coveted. It happens during the rut, and it happens in basically anywhere where elk hunting is established by the Arizona Game and Fish. So what I'm trying to say is every single unit has an early archery elk hunt in it. These archery elk hunts are not exactly the easiest hunts to go on. I'm just going to say it right there. Look, these elk are rutting. But one of the things that I hear so much, especially from both residents and non-residents, guys, is they wait a certain amount of time. So I'll give you some units real quick. If you're a resident, you're trying to draw a unit 10 tag, a unit 8 tag, a unit 9 tag, a unit 1 tag, a unit 27 tag. Those are the big, unit 23, those are the big trophy units for these early archery elk hunting. What people aren't prepared for is the hunting pressure. And in Arizona, look, there is a very limited number of tags available. And yes, we do have to draw for them, and it's very difficult. However, that does not mean that you get to hunt these units by yourself. You wait a long time, you put in the effort, but hunting pressure is something that it's kind of a baseline across the board in Arizona elk hunting. So outside of some limited opportunity hunts and some hunts that are less desirable, you are gonna experience pressure. So when you wait, however long it is you're gonna wait, especially for a top tier archery unit like I just listed, specifically unit 9, unit 10, and 1 and 27, and then some of the second tier stuff, just trophy quality wise, like unit 8, unit 6A, unit 22, and 23 is a top tier unit. There's just a very few archery tags available, and it can be pretty tough. But you guys, there is going to be pressure. And in some of these hunts, they actually add in a cow hunt, which is totally disruptive for the hunting. If you're chasing down bulls and there's somebody who is trying to chase the cows that the bull is trying to chase, it becomes kind of a war. So right off the bat, you have to be ready to deal and encounter hunting pressure. And this is not a bad thing, guys. This is public land. So without public land, without hunting pressure, we wouldn't have these opportunities to hunt. So I'm not saying this in a negative way. Hunting pressure is what allows us to keep doing this every year, and we don't have to pay these crazy landowner fees just to go hunt an elk. You know, it's still very equal opportunity if you're willing to apply for the draw and willing to get after it and do these things. Guys, it's really is a blessing. It can be unfortunate if you're hunting and some other hunter comes in, or a group of hunters or whatever, but that's just the price we pay. And that's the sacrifice that we make to be able to do this on public land without any kind of crazy access fees, because that is Arizona. It's primarily all public land except for the Big Boquillas Ranch and Unit 10 and a few other little spots, which still isn't very much in relatively speaking to access some of that stuff. So anyway, guys, don't look at public pressure as a negative thing. So in the archery season, here's the fundamentals of it. When you draw a tag, these elk are going to start rutting. I've seen elk, and in this year it was very much a year reminds me of last year at this time. elk were rutting, honestly, in late August. There was bulls bugling, cows bunched up, bulls chasing cows. Again, these cows were not coming into estrus that early, but the rut was kind of starting. So when you have precipitation and good rainfall, good snow, what you have to realize from an overall hunting perspective is there's going to be lots of water everywhere. These elk are going to be healthy. They're going to have lots of energy. The weather will be conducive typically in the late summer, early fall, that August, September, for rut action. Typically it's cooler with some rain, some monsoons, and some cloud cover late in the day. But really what determines a lot of the rut is not necessarily like moon phase or timing. That does play a part in the rut and the actual timing, but the duration of these animals rutting at their full potential really has to do with how healthy they are. So if you have a really tough spring, a tough on the fawns, tough on the cows, and tough on the bulls, they've been kind of hiding out, not a ton of feed. Well, if they don't have the fat content, they don't have the nutrients, and this goes for cows too, guys. You can't forget that the cows are the ones that are producing these elk from year to year. So if they're not the healthiest, the fattest, if they haven't had the nutrition in this upcoming season, then they're still going to come into estrus and they're still going to breed, but their periods of rigorous activity are way shortened. So if they're coming into this season, which I predict they will be just from judging from this spring and the precipitation, if they're coming in fully ready, healthy, they've got enough water, they've got really good high protein rich food from the rainfall, they're going to come in ready to rut harder, longer. So in other words, in a bad year with low precipitation, they may rut a little bit during the night, an hour or two each day. They may look for, a breeding partner. Bulls may fight a little bit, but if everybody's super healthy, if everybody's gotten everything they need, they're going to be at it all the time. These bulls are going to be fighting each other. They're going to be bugling. These cows are going to have more energy to run and to breed and to be available for these bulls and to be in estrus longer. So that's something to keep in mind, guys, when you're drawing an archery tag. And say you've waited a long time, maybe 10 years as a resident to do this. Keep in mind, you can turn your tag back in, and if it's a total trash year, if we've got no rainfall in your specific unit, don't be afraid to turn your tag back in. It's not the end of the world. You'll get another opportunity. Now, I'm talking to guys with bonus points here. If you drew a unit 9 tag and you had 0 points, don't turn your tag back in. Hunt it, because it may take you 10 years before you draw that tag again. That was just, you went into the random draw and you drew that tag. Hunt it no matter what. If you're a bonus point guy, top bonus point allotment, which are resident or non-resident, be very picky. If you're not seeing the right rainfall, if you're not getting the right information with these elk, and you don't expect a real good rut or the people that you talk to or guides or whatever, then turn your tag back in. This is your time to experience Arizona elk hunting, and you've put in the time to have bonus points. Don't be fooled. It's not a crazy carnival circus event every year in some of these units. A lot of these units still take a ton of work. They take a ton of scouting, and they take a lot of time just in the field to get that opportunity at that upper echelon bull that we're all looking for. So that's just touching on the bonus point system, guys. If you don't realize, if you haven't understood how it works, Arizona, if you do not draw, you get bonus points. You have the opportunity to both buy a bonus point only and stay out of the draw completely. If you have your schedule, you don't want to potentially draw a tag when you have another hunt coming up in the fall. But Arizona offers what's called point guard, which means if you have bonus points, you can purchase point guard during the draw process. And I'm going to go over this when I go through the actual draw. And you can actually keep your bonus points as like an insurance policy if a number of reasons that are outside of your control, like weather, not enough rainfall, your personal schedule, maybe you just moved, or you have a conflict, somebody's getting married, or any of those things that can happen. you don't have to put all your eggs in that basket. It's great. You draw your tag, you plan for your hunt, but if something comes up, you can then turn your tag back into the Arizona Game and Fish Department and they will give you your points back. You will lose the amount of money for that tag as far as I know. That's my understanding of it. So you'll lose out on the money, but you'll at least keep your bonus points and hopefully hunt the next year. So that's just a little bonus point thing. I throw out the word bonus point a lot, and I just want everybody to I don't want to assume everybody knows what I'm talking about, because there are preference points in Wyoming and Nevada, and then every state does things a little bit differently. But in Arizona, you get a bonus point if you don't draw, and that point carries on with you to the next year and basically doubles your chances of getting drawn that next year. And then it just adds on and adds on and adds on from year to year. So looking at the archery season overall, it is a rut hunt. It is a hunt where you're going to experience bulls that are bugling, cows that are in heat. These elk are going to need water. So one thing that you have to understand too in these archery elk hunting is we watch the videos, we watch these guys that bugle in bulls, and they're really awesome at it. That like Rocky Jacobson guy. I mean, these guys are like expert callers, and they go around some of the toughest areas in the United States, Colorado and Idaho and all these over-the-counter areas, and they bugle these bulls in and they have really good success. Well, these guys have been doing it for 30 years, some longer. Some have been bugling bulls in since they were like 5 years old. I'm assuming that's not the case for you, and that really isn't the case for me either. So having an understanding of how to hunt these elk overall during archery season is really important. So these elk are moving a ton, okay? So they're chasing each other, they're rutting around, they're moving like crazy. They need water. So you want to try to hunt these elk during archery season at their weakest points. So in the rut, these elk are weak from a mental standpoint. These bulls are not looking for survival. That's second or third on the list. They're looking to breed cows. So you hunt that weakness and you try to bugle them in, or you try to cow call them in, because you're hunting at their point where they're vulnerable. They have a vulnerability during the rut that they don't have any other time of the year, where they put their survival aside and breeding becomes their top priority. And then you can slip in the 45 yards, hopefully, or they come into you disregarding their survival, disregarding their personal safety in a lot of cases, looking for a cow that they think might be there or a bull that they want to fight with. So understanding the vulnerabilities of these elk are really important. So these bulls are obviously vulnerable during the rut, and you can call them in, but don't rely on that as your number one priority, because what I mentioned earlier, guys, there's going to be hunting pressure in these archery units. There's going to be pressure. There's going to be people bugling. There's going to be people cow calling, and you can have success 100%. And that doesn't mean just because somebody else is bugling too that you need to go leave the county and you can't bugle either, or you can't cow call. That's not what I'm saying. But be ready for bulls that have been called at previous to you. Be ready for bulls that maybe coming in weary. And these older bulls, they've lived through 3, 4, 5, 6 archery seasons to get where they're at. And so they can recognize amateur calling, or calling that just doesn't sound right, because you can have an amateur caller that sounds fantastic. You can rip a bull bugle for the first time in your life, and you could have a 400-inch bull that is like, that dude, I believe him. I want to come and fight with that bull. So sometimes experience doesn't really matter, but overall, I'm just talking a grand assumption, grand overall scheme of how this archery season works is the reliance on calling can be very difficult and very finicky. It can be, out of the whole 2-week season, you can get bulls that are really call friendly, maybe 5 to 7 days out of the whole 14-day season. So that doesn't mean you won't get satellite bulls coming in. That doesn't mean you can't do it any time of the year, any time of that season, but it's not something to rely on. And what I mentioned earlier, their second vulnerability is they're moving. They're chasing elk, they're chasing cows. The elk are moving all around. Also, hunting pressure is pushing these elk around way more than they are the rest of the year. So their energy is expended way more. They're being pushed around not only by each other, but other hunters. So they're going to need water. They need water. Unlike any other time of the year, during the rut, they need water. both to stay hydrated, obviously to survive, but also to give them energy to keep going. They're not just getting water to survive, they're getting energy, they're getting water to stay hydrated for the next day. You know, so in the summer, these elk water quite a bit. They're just watering, maintaining their health. They're just watering, maintaining hydration. In the rut, they are getting water so that they can perform. They can chase these cows down, that they can run, and these elk, these big bulls, can follow that scent trail for 40 miles if they have to. So it's not a survival thing strictly during this time of year. It is a rut engaged hydration that these elk instinctually know that they need water, and they need it every single day because they don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And hunting pressure's got them moving around, and chasing cows has got them moving around, so they're thirsty regardless. So you really want to understand the vulnerabilities of bull elk during archery season, during the early archery season. So obviously rut's number one. These big bulls need to breed. And the satellite bulls need to breed. Little bulls need to breed. Okay, so it's lowering their alarm system. Okay, so they're not going to be as alarmed when they see something that they're not quite sure of. There's something bugling at me in a bush, and maybe I see a baseball cap. I'm not quite as alarmed. Okay, and then water, of course. So you have to stay focused on hunting both ways. And the third way is kind of a third tier way to hunt. But so number one is you're chasing bugling bulls, you're calling, you're doing that stuff typically in the morning or in the early evening. And late at night, guys, one of the ways to locate elk during this archery season is at 2-3 a.m. is to get out and drive in these back roads, and listen for calls, listen for bulls, and have a place to start in the morning, because these mornings start quick. These elk hunts are long days. You will not realize how long of a day it is till you start chasing bulls around for 5 days straight, and you realize that you're on like 4 hours of sleep daily, and you need a shower really bad, and all this kind of stuff. So you really want to focus on the rut, number one, during early archery. Number two, you need to focus on water. So that's the second phase of hunting. You need to understand how the water works. You need to understand the water holes. You need to get in the units and really figure out where these elk are hitting water, guys. And it's no secret. These elk leave footprints. They are very heavy animals. If the water hole is getting hit by a bunch of elk, and you don't necessarily need to look for bulls or cows, you just want to look for high activity, because what can happen is a bull can come in and hit water, and then a big bull, and then right after him, 5, 10, 15 cows come in and they stamp and stomp his footprints all over the place. So it's not necessarily, ooh, is it a bull or a cow, but look for the activity level. One thing to understand fully in the Arizona law system is that when you are setting up on a water hole, it doesn't need to be a manufacturer blind. You can set up a manufacturer blind, and you can set up just a little stick frame blind, like you cut some trees, some limbs, and form a little ground blind. You'll see these on several water holes if you're visiting, the Arizona elk country. You'll see where guys have made kind of brush-in blinds. The thing that you have to understand, especially going into these areas for the first time, is that during hunting season, if you get to the water first, legally that is your water hole. Nobody can legally come in and sit that same water hole as you. That sounds great, but what you have is you need to understand that, number one, and you need to understand that if there are elk coming into that water hole, there are going to be probably other people looking to get into that water hole too. So you need to get there early. Okay, so then becomes water hole wars, because we don't have cameras anymore. Cameras became illegal last year, so nobody really knows what bulls are hitting what water hole. So be ready to get to a water hole early. Look for a lot of sign. Look for rubs around the water hole. That's something that you can tell that's different than just tracks. If around that water hole you see saplings rubbed by bulls' antlers, not only getting velvet off, but marking their territory, that's something that you can determine without cameras and without looking at tracks. Like, hey, there is a bull in this area that he most likely is hitting this water hole. So hunt the rut, hunt water, and then third, you can also hunt the bedding area. So when you're hunting rut, and this kind of happens in between when these bulls are rutting early in the morning and in between when they're hitting water, which is typically middle of the day or afternoon, they will be in this bedding period. So by following them and chasing them in the rut and maybe watching them from a distance or just sneaking on them, keeping the wind in your favor and keeping them a comfortable distance away, you can understand where they bed potentially every day unless they get bumped. And that's something. The third tactic is if they're coming into water too late or they're rutting too early in the morning, is to go in and sneak into their bedding ground, obviously with the wind in your favor, and slide in and try to get within position. My favorite tactic in this specifically is if you have a group of rutted, or it doesn't have to be rutting elk, but if you have a group of elk that are all bedded down and there's a couple bulls in the area, typically there'll be a couple satellite bulls or younger bulls on the perimeter. What I like to do is get into 100 yards or closer, but stay in a comfortable position where you're hidden and the wind is your favor against any eyeballs and any noses in the area. And then just kind of sit and wait. And really your chances of a bull elk standing up and maybe chasing a satellite bull your way or chasing a cow in your direction is substantially higher than you trying to slip into 30 yards on a group of a bedded 30 elk and get an actual shot. Even if you do slip into elk, as we know, if you're a bow hunter, it doesn't matter distance. If you don't have a shot, you don't have a shot. So the success that I see most often during this style of hunting is slipping into, like I said, a comfortable distance, which is generally 100 yards. It can be a little further, it can be a little closer, but the wind has to be in your favor. And just wait and let the wildlife give you a shot. Wait and let a bull get up and smell a cow. Wait and let him push a bull your direction. And if it doesn't happen, doesn't happen. And here's the beauty of it. You didn't bump them. You didn't push them. So if it doesn't happen, if they drift off, they walk totally away from you, then fine, back out. You don't need to chase them. Get out and try it the next day, or go to your water source, or go bugle, or go cow call, get around them, do something that's not going to totally bump them out of their normal routine, because pattern these elk is a really effective way to understand the strategy of how to hunt them with a bow. So that's basically my early archery rundown in Arizona, how to go about it, and just what to expect. You're going to see hunting pressure. You're going to have hot weather typically. It's going to be in the 80s. You're going to need to understand how to get that animal out of there and process pretty quickly. But you're also going to have a lot of things in your favor. You're going to have some of the biggest bulls in the world walking around, bugling. You're going to have some of the best habitat in the world. You're going to be in world-class elk hunting country. So with all that being said, you're in a good position that very few people get to be in, really, is hunting elk on public land and some of the biggest elk in the country, in the world. I want to touch on real quick late archery. I'll get into more specifics, guys, unit specific stuff for actual archery hunts, each unit and kind of how they differ. Just giving a broad overview, and same with late archery. Late archery, there are a few units that offer late archery hunts, which usually start mid-November and run to late November. It's a 2-week hunt as well. It happens post-rut period. And these bulls are typically by themselves. The weather cools off drastically. The hunt numbers and hunt pressure are way down. The bonus point necessity is way down, meaning if you're a resident or a non-resident, you can draw this tag way more frequently than the early archery tag. You will probably not hear an elk bugle, but you will probably not have a ton of people running around the woods with you as well. So I'm not going to say it evens out, because elk are extremely hard to find in thick country without them giving a vocal sound to indicate where their position is. But you can have a really good hunt with these late archery hunts, sitting water and spot stalking on these bulls that are for the most part solo, and have an opportunity at a higher frequency in your hunting life than an early archery elk hunt. Even as a resident, you're not going to early archery elk hunt every year. You may early archery elk hunt every 5 to 10 years realistically, where some of these late archery hunts, you can literally hunt these every single year as a resident. So it determines your schedule and your goals. late archery elk hunting can be very, very difficult with the lack of movement compared to the early season. So these bulls are typically going to be in rougher country. They're going to transition from the rut country, which is a little lower where the cows, and they're going to transition to these deep canyons where you can hunt them spot and stock style. You can hunt them over water, and you can hunt them obviously just normal ways, just kind of sneaking around, looking where they bed, looking for their typical bedding areas. Bugling is rare. However, I have had bugling and rutting elk during this period in mid-November. Just again, when we talk early on in this video, we talked about healthy elk and the ability of healthy elk to really maintain a rut and a healthy rut and a hard rut. When you have healthy fawns, they come into a second estrus sometimes in that November period that can really get the bulls back going again. And I've seen that a few times. You have the opportunity to hunt big bulls during this late archery hunt. And like I said, it's not a high risk with bonus points. It's not a high risk type of a hunt. It's a 2-week hunt, so you kind of get a feel for it. It's a good way to kind of get an introduction into elk hunting in Arizona. Is maybe one of these late archery hunts where you don't have to apply very long. You can get in there, you're going to see some elk, you might get a shot, but there's not a ton of pressure as far as, you know, you got to make it happen. Not a ton of hunting pressure just from other people. They limit these tags. So all these things to consider, guys. But I hope that helped just have an understanding of, before you go into an archery elk hunt in Arizona, what to expect. Very different from Colorado, very different from Idaho and Wyoming from some of these points. And just to touch on Wyoming for a second, you can totally access wilderness as a non-resident in Arizona. There's no laws. In Wyoming, you can't access wilderness as a non-resident without an outfitter. In Arizona, that's not the case. You can hunt wilderness areas anytime. So the next few videos that I'm going to do throughout this duration of this draw period, guys, are really going to get into unit specific. I'm going to talk about rifle hunting and muzzleloader hunting here coming up as well, and some of the different opportunities Arizona has. But I hope that gives you a good opportunity to explore the archery units, archery elk hunting, and really pros and cons of maybe applying for an archery hunt versus a rifle hunt, and actually what to expect, guys. So good luck in the draw. I'll send another video out here soon, and yeah, leave comments below if you have any questions or need to get a hold of me. I will be in and out of service. I am still guiding and hunting over-the-counter archery deer here in Arizona. That doesn't end until January 31st. So I'm still running around. I'm just trying to get out videos as much as I can to help. And yeah, take it easy. We'll talk to you soon.